Hi guys, welcome back to another legal studies video, and in this video I'll be discussing the difference between aggravating factors and mitigating factors. Now these factors relate to criminal law. They're factors that the judge takes into consideration when deciding upon sentencing. So I'll start with aggravating factors. So what are aggravating factors? Well, essentially aggravating factors are factors which increase the culpability of the offender. So for example, let's say someone commits a crime whilst on parole or while serving a community corrections order. They commit a crime. Well, when it comes time to them being sentenced, let's say they're found guilty, for example, and it comes time to them being sentenced, the judge will actually take that into consideration. They'll say to themselves, well, you were actually on parole at the time you committed this offence, which actually demonstrates that you have a prior criminal history, and as a result, you should be punished accordingly. So essentially, aggravating factors are factors which increase the culpability of the offender. And one example is having a prior criminal history, you're committing a crime whilst on parole, which again demonstrates a prior criminal history, etc. So aggravating factors are factors which increase the culpability of an offender. So what are mitigating factors? Well, essentially, mitigating factors are factors which decrease the culpability of an offender. They are factors which, so they decrease the culpability of an offender. For example, let's say the accused had a rough childhood. They were, let's say, abused by their parents. They grew up in foster care. They were, for example, heavily bullied and berated. Let's say the accused had a traumatic childhood. Well, that will then serve as a mitigating factor. So that's a factor which actually, so essentially mitigating factors, they decrease the culpability of an offender, and they are factors which essentially might actually help to make the accused's sentence more lenient, okay? Another example of a mitigating factor could be a plea of guilt. Let's say the accused pleads guilty and admits responsibility, admits that they committed a criminal offence. Let's say the accused shows remorse. Okay, let's say that the accused actually shows remorse for the crimes they committed. That is actually, they are examples of mitigating factors. So factors which actually decrease the culpability of an offender, whether it be, for example, pleading guilty, or another example of a mitigating factor is police cooperation. So let's say the accused gets arrested and cooperates heavily with the police. They're actually forthcoming and they don't actually hide information. They're actually forthcoming and they explain what happened. Well, that's another example of a mitigating factor, which might actually help to decrease the severity of the sanction that the accused eventually receives. So just to summarize, aggravating factors are factors which actually, they increase the culpability of an offender. An example, for example, prior criminal history, the nature of the offence. Let's say someone commits an armed robbery and takes several people hostage whilst holding an armed Glock, for example. Well, I guess the threat of force is an example of an aggravating factor. Or for example, let's say the accused commits a serious crime and, for example, they don't actually admit guilt, or they don't show remorse. That's an aggravating factor. So that's a factor. Well, aggravating factors, they increase the culpability of an offender, and then mitigating factors are factors which actually decrease the culpability of an offender, whether it be a traumatic childhood, cooperation with police, showing remorse, okay, showing remorse. They're examples of mitigating factors. Now, keep in mind, guys, aggravating factors and mitigating factors are what the judge takes into consideration when deciding upon an appropriate sanction sentence, okay? Sanction, sentence, same thing. Essentially, aggravating factors and mitigating factors are what the judge takes into consideration when deciding upon an appropriate sanction. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Take care. Stay tuned for another video soon. This is actually my 20th legal studies video, so I might take a short break, but I'll be back for more videos soon. Maybe not next week, but in a month or two, perhaps. And thank you very much for listening, guys. Take care. I hope you found this very informative. And so aggravating factors, they increase the culpability of an offender, and mitigating factors, they decrease the culpability of an offender. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Take care. Bye.